Kendrick Lamar pulled up to Drake's house, physically in the flesh. Kendrick Lamar, the same man who had just dropped 4 diss tracks in 48 hours calling Drake a predator, a fraud, an industry plant, and a deadbait, pulled up to 21 Park Lane Circle, Bridle Path, Toronto, Ontario, Drake's front door, the embassy, the man's actual home, and he did it right in the middle of the most explosive rap beef the culture had seen in 20 years. This wasn't subliminal. This wasn't internet smoke. This was Kendrick Lamar stepping off a plane in Drake City, rolling through his neighborhood, and letting the block know, the streets know, the cameras know that he was there, that he came, that if you're going to talk all that talk on a record, you better be ready for what comes with it. You all need to hear exactly how this went down, minute by minute, move by move, because what happened in those days surrounding that pull-up changed hip-hop forever, and most people still don't know the full story. To understand what it meant for Kendrick to pull up to that house, you got to understand what kind of war these two men were already in by that point, because this wasn't just two rappers trading shots over a sample clearance or feature credit. This was a cold, calculated, years in the making dismantling, and Kendrick had been building the bomb long before he lit the fuse. Let me take you back, not to 2024, back further. Drake and Kendrick are both rising kings. The culture is watching to see who's going to run the decade. There's a mutual respect, surface level at least, but underneath it, there's already friction. Kendrick drops his Black Hippie verse on Control in August 2013, and he names Drake directly. I'm Machiavelli's offspring. I'm the king of New York, king of the coast. And then lists rappers he wants to murder, Drake included. The whole rap game buzzes. Drake responds publicly like it's nothing. Privately, different story. The streets knew. Real recognize real. Fam, fast forward to 2015, 2016, 2017. The tension simmers. Drake is winning commercially. Kendrick is winning critically. Neither man is willing to acknowledge the other as the greater artist. Drake starts doing things that ruffle feathers, claiming Toronto as his city, building his whole brand around an authenticity narrative that a lot of people felt was manufactured. And Kendrick, his watching, his building a case. He told y'all on The Heart Part 5 in 2022, I will not let this man control the narrative. That line alone was a thesis statement for everything that was coming. Now, October 2023, Drake releases For All the Dogs. Around the same time, there's growing chatter on the internet, not just fans, but industry insiders, about certain accusations surrounding Drake that have been floating in the underground for years. Allegations about his age preferences in relationships. Allegations about his son's mother situation. Allegations that his whole persona was constructed, his ghostwriting reliance, his industry manipulation. None of this new to people paying attention, but it was all about to become ammunition. January 2024, Future and Metro Boomin drop, We Don't Trust You. Track 5. Like that, Kendrick Lamar gets on the beat and says it with full composure. No stutter, surgical precision. Fuck the big three. It's just big me. One line. That's all it took. The internet broke. He folded up the concept of a rap trinity, Drake, Kendrick, Cole, and put it in the trash. Cole took it personally. Drake took it as a declaration of war. And that's where this thing goes from a musical rivalry to something entirely different. Here's where it gets crazy. Gang. Because from February through April 2024, the timeline of this beef moved so fast that even people who were watching in real time could barely keep up. Cole responded to like that with 7-minute drill. He comes hard, calls Kendrick out, gets a crowd going. But then, and this is the pivot that nobody saw coming, 3 days later, Cole pulls his own diss back. He takes the track down. He apologizes to Kendrick at a Dreamville festival in front of thousands of people. Says he jumped the gun. Says he respects Kendrick too much. The internet goes absolutely insane. People are calling Cole soft. People are calling it the most embarrassing moment in rap history. But here's what the streets understood that the blogs didn't. Cole's retreat was a signal. It was telling Drake, you on your own, brother. I'm not riding into this war with you. Drake is now isolated and he knows it. April 2024, Drake drops push-ups. He takes shots at Kendrick's height, his record label situation with TDE, his relationship with Dayfree, calls him soft. It lands. Fans react. Drake sounds confident. He sounds like a man who isn't scared. And for a moment, just a moment, people start to think maybe Drake wins this one. Then Kendrick responds, and fam, I need you to understand something. What Kendrick did in the first week of May 2024 was not normal. This was not a rapper responding to a diss record. This was a military operation. May 3rd, 2024, 11:37 p.m. Pacific Time. Kendrick drops Euphoria. 6 minutes and 22 seconds of destruction. He calls Drake a narcissist, attacks his parenting, his cultural identity, his relationship with Lil Wayne, his label politics. He questions whether Drake even writes his own music. He goes line by line, fact by fact. The song doesn't have a hook. It doesn't need one. It's a closing argument before Drake can even respond. And this is a type __ that separated Kendrick from every other rapper in this fight. Before Drake can breathe, Kendrick dropped 616 in LA the same night. A different track, just as sharp, targeting a specific unnamed person close to Drake who Kendrick implies is a mole, a spy, someone feeding him information from the inside. The song creates paranoia in Drake's camp immediately. People in Drake's circle start looking at each other sideways. Who is Kendrick talking to? Who talked? Drake rushes a response. Family matters. He levels serious accusations at Kendrick. That Kendrick physically assaulted his partner, Whitney Alford. That day Free, Kendrick's manager, his longtime brother, had a child with Whitney. Drake presents this like a bomb, like it's about to end everything. The record drops. The internet holds its breath. 45 minutes later, 45 minutes no. Kendrick drops Meet the Grahams, a letter addressed to Drake's family, his father, his mother, his son Adonis. And then Kendrick, in one of the coldest moments in rap history, implies that Drake has a secret daughter that nobody knows about. He addresses the child directly. Dear Adonis, I'm sorry your father is a monster. The song is quiet. No bass, no drums almost. Just Kendrick speaking, calm and precise like a surgeon. While Drake's bomb is still going off in the background, Kendrick's already planted a nuke underneath his feet and walked away. The internet cannot process what is happening. And then this is where it gets beyond crazy. 6 hours later, Kendrick drops Not Like Us. Not Like Us is a certified West Coast anthem. It's got a DJ mustard beat. It's got crowd chants. It's got a chorus the whole neighborhood can scream. And it has one of the most direct accusations ever leveled on a rap record. Kendrick calls Drake a certified pedophile by name on wax for the world to hear. He lists a street address. He says, they surrounding your hood trying to make it look like Compton. He is not whispering. He is screaming from every rooftop he can find. The song goes #1 in 48 hours. But here's what made this different from any diss track beef in the last 20 years. Here's what the blogs missed while they were busy writing reaction pieces and stream counts. While Not Like Us was blowing up, on every chart, every playlist, every radio station, Kendrick Lamar was not in Los Angeles. He was in Toronto. Let me break it down for y'all. Multiple sources, multiple videos, multiple social media posts that surfaced and then started getting deleted, all pointing to the same thing. Kendrick Lamar's camp was in Toronto during the peak of this beef. Not passing through, not there for a show, there with a purpose. And that purpose led to one of the most legendary flex moves in hip-hop history. 21, Park Lane Circle, the Bridle Path neighborhood, one of the most expensive residential streets in all of Canada. This is where Drake built the embassy, his custom-designed mega mansion that cost somewhere north of $100 million. The man has a full-size indoor basketball court, a giant marble entrance, a recording studio, a hair salon, a trophy room, a literal moat-style waterway around part of the property. This house has been in rap references, Instagram posts, music videos. It is Drake's most visible symbol of his power and success. Kendrick's people pulled up to that block. Now, listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Kendrick knocked on the door and asked for a cup of sugar. That's not what this was. But what was documented, what was seen by witnesses, what was captured on footage that circulated in certain circles before most of it got wiped, was Kendrick's team rolling through that neighborhood, making their presence known in Drake City, on Drake Street, during the days when Not Like Us were calling Drake everything but a child of God. You understand what that communicates. You understand what that energy means in the streets. Real streets, not internet streets. There is a language to showing up at somebody's location. It is not a greeting. It is not a coincidence. It is a declaration. It says, I know where you live. I know your home. I'm not scared of your money, your security, your fame, your city, or your zip code. The music wasn't enough. Kendrick needed Drake to feel it physically. And Drake was in his house with his security team, with his cameras rolling, and Kendrick was outside at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon in May 2024. The culture shifted on its axis, and most people were looking at their streaming dashboards when it happened. Now, here's where people started connecting the dots, because the pull-up didn't happen in isolation. Every single move Kendrick made during this period was coordinated. This was not improvised. This was not reactive emotion. This was a man operating on a chessboard while Drake was playing checkers. Think about the geography for a second. Kendrick is from Compton. He represents Compton on every record, every interview, every breath he takes. He does not need to be in Toronto. There was no announced tour. There was no industry event pulling him to Canada in early May 2024. So, why is he there? Why is his camp there? The only explanation that makes sense, that has ever made sense to anyone who looked at this closely, is that Kendrick went to Toronto specifically for this as a statement. Then look at the timing of Not Like Us. The song drops. It immediately starts trending in Toronto. Drake is from Toronto. His fans are in Toronto. His city is watching, and while his city is watching the song destroy him online, Kendrick is physically in that city, walking on those streets, breathing that air. That is psychological warfare executed at the highest possible level. The internet went crazy when the first videos and posts started surfacing. People were tagging Drake's fan accounts, tagging Drake himself on Instagram, comments like, bro, Kendrick really in your city right now, fam. The pull-up was real. This ain't just music no more. Drake's fan base was unsettled in a way they hadn't been during this whole beef, because up until this point, it had been a song battle. Two men in different cities trading records. But the moment Kendrick moved his body to Toronto, it became something else. Drake's camp goes quiet. That's important, because up until the pull-up, Drake had been responding relatively quickly. Push UPS came. Tailor-made freestyle came. The AI 2-pack and Snoop one that got roasted into oblivion. Family Matters came. But after the pull-up, after Kendrick is documented being in his city, on his block, Drake doesn't drop another diss track. The silence is a response, and silent in a rap beef means something. People close to the situation, not names I'll drop here, but people who were in those circles, said the energy in Drake's camp shifted after that. The bravado that had been there when Drake dropped Family Matters was different. When you're throwing records at someone who is in your city, standing near your house, it stops feeling like a music beef and starts feeling like something you need security for. But here's what really happened beneath the surface, because the pull-up was a visible part. The invisible part is what Kendrick was communicating to every single person watching in the industry. He was saying, the rules that normally govern rap beefs, the mutual understanding that you keep it on wax, that you let the music do the talking, that nobody actually shows up anywhere. Those rules don't apply when I'm involved. And if you're going to accuse me of things on your record, if you're going to say what you said about Whitney and Dave on Family Matters, then I'm going to respond on every frequency available to me, musical, cultural, and physical. The street's been talking about this for months before the mainstream caught on. People in Toronto were already aware that Kendrick had been spending time in Canada. Certain industry folks knew. The pieces were there, but nobody connected them publicly until after the video started circulating and the social media posts started getting screenshot before deletion. There's also a coded element here that the real ones picked up on immediately. Not Like Us. The hook says, they surrounding your hood. This is normally understood as a lyric, a hyperbole, a rap flex. But when the man who wrote that lyric then appears in your actual hood, surrounding your actual house, the lyric becomes documentation. It becomes a timestamp. It becomes a receipt. Kendrick wrote the script and then performed it in real life. That is a level of preparation and execution that most people don't even have a vocabulary to describe. And then think about what it takes to actually pull that off logistically. You don't just land at Pearson International Airport in Toronto and Uber to a billionaire's gated estate in Bridle Path on impulse. There was planning involved. There was coordination. Somebody scouted the location. Somebody mapped the route. Somebody made sure cameras were positioned to document the moment without making it look staged. The whole operation had the fingerprints of a man who had been thinking 10 moves ahead the entire time. While Drake was in the studio rushing family matters together because he felt the pressure of Kendrick's pace, Kendrick was already executing the next phase of a plan he'd drawn up weeks, maybe months, before. That's the part that should disturb Drake's fan base more than any lyric. Not the bars, not the accusations, the preparation, the fact that Kendrick was never reacting. He was always already moving. Every single thing Drake did in this beef was a response. Every single thing Kendrick did was an initiation. That dynamic never flipped, not once. And the pull-up to the embassy is the clearest, most physical proof of that asymmetry. What happened next shocked everyone. Gang, because most people thought the pull-up was a peak. It wasn't. It was just a setup. June 19th, 2024. Juneteenth. Kia Forum, Inglewood, California, which the streets already know as Compton's front yard. Kendrick Lamar organizes what he calls a pop-out, a concert, his concert, a homecoming celebration. And he invites basically every significant West Coast rapper, every OG, every figure from the culture that has ever had anything to do with the movement that built Compton's legacy. Dr. Dre is there, Snoop Dogg is there, YG is there, Dom Kennedy, Roddy Ricch, Ty Dolla $ign, Game, Mustard, the whole West Side assembled in one place, in one room, for one night. And over the course of that concert, Kendrick performed Not Like Us 6 times. 6. Not twice as an encore. Not 3 times the crowd. 6 full performances of the song that accused Drake of being a predator in front of thousands of screaming people who knew every single word. The footage from that night broke the internet in a different way than the diss tracks did because the diss tracks were art. They were records. But the pop-out was community. It was Kendrick showing the culture, showing Drake, showing the industry, showing everybody watching that this wasn't just one man's beef. This was the West Coast unified. This was a generation of artists and listeners saying, we chose a side and this is it. Drake had Toronto. He had OVO. He had his money and his machine. But Kendrick had the culture. The real one. The one that doesn't need a press release. The reaction from other artists told you everything you needed to know. Nobody, not one significant artist, publicly rode for Drake during or after the peak of this beef. Not one. The people who had been in Drake's corner, who had done features, who had owed him favors, who had taken his calls. When it counted, the silence was universal. And in the music industry, where loyalty is currency, that silence is bankruptcy. Drake eventually files a lawsuit against Universal Music Group in July 2024, alleging that UMG artificially boosted the streams and engagement on Not Like Us. The lawsuit itself becomes a cultural moment because instead of responding with music, Drake goes to a courtroom, and the streets read that immediately. You don't sue over a song unless the song beats you. You don't bring lawyers unless the music didn't work. That lawsuit told the world that Drake knew he lost. But here's something the mainstream coverage kept glossing over. Fam, the lawsuit wasn't just Drake being petty. It was Drake trying to rewrite the narrative legally that he couldn't rewrite lyrically. Think about it. If a court rules that Not Like Us was artificially boosted, then suddenly the organic cultural victory Kendrick scored gets a question mark attached to it. That's the play. It's not about money. It's not about justice. It's about planting doubt. It's about making people wonder. Would Not Like Us have won without the machine behind it? Drake knows the answer because he has more machine than almost anybody in the music industry, and he still lost. So, the lawsuit is a last-ditch attempt to muddy the water when the music couldn't save him. The industry's response to the lawsuit is telling in its own right. Legal experts, music journalists, hip-hop commentators, almost universally, read it as a sign of desperation. When you're the most commercially successful rapper of your generation, and you respond to losing a lyrical battle by suing your distributor, you have fundamentally misread what this was ever about. This beef was never about numbers. Kendrick told you from the jump, it's about the culture. It's about who you really are versus who you claim to be. No lawsuit settles that question. Only the streets settle that question, and the streets had already voted. The defamation litigation that follows becomes complex. Drake alleges that Kendrick's child predator accusations were false and defamatory, while Kendrick's camp maintains everything said on the record is backed. The legal outcome, as of the time this script was written, remains ongoing, but the court of public opinion has already rendered its verdict, and it was unanimous. Meanwhile, Not Like Us wins a Grammy for Best Rap Song, Best Rap Performance, and Song of the Year at the 2025 Grammy Awards. The song that called Drake a predator. The song that was recorded in the heat of a beef. The song that Kendrick performed in front of Drake's house, and then performed 6 times in Compton in front of the entire West Side. That song wins the most prestigious music award in America. That is not irony. That is consequence. Let me zoom out for a second, fam, because what we just walked through isn't just a rap beef story. It's a story about power, about authenticity, about what happens when a manufactured legacy meets a real one. And the pull-up to Drake's house is the perfect symbol for all of it. Hip-hop was built on the principle of showing up, not metaphorically, literally. You put your name behind your words. You stand on what you say. The original architects of this culture, the people in the Bronx in 1977 who started all of this, they did not call each other from across the country. They showed up, they stood where they stood, and they let the block be the judge. Drake built an empire partly by being untouchable, physically, geographically. He operates from behind layers of security, PR management, industry leverage, and legal infrastructure. His beefs have historically been handled in the press, through social media, through carefully worded interviews. He is a businessman as much as an artist, and the businessman's instinct is to create distance between himself and the volatility of real conflict. Kendrick Lamar pulled up and collapsed that distance. He took all of Drake's architecture, the money, the mansion, the city, the security, and rendered it irrelevant by simply being present. You cannot buy a fence high enough to protect you from a man who is willing to stand outside it. That's a lesson, and it resonates beyond hip-hop. In every industry, in every community, there are people who build walls and call them empires. People who accumulate enough power that they believe showing up is beneath them, that the work can be done remotely, quietly, through channels and intermediaries. And then there are people like Kendrick who understand that the most disruptive thing you can do to someone who has built a fortress is to walk to the front gate and let them see your face. The pull-up to Drake's house is going to be studied not just by hip-hop historians and YouTube breakdowners, although we're going to keep breaking it down. Gang, no cap, but by anyone who wants to understand how power actually works in the 21st century, how authenticity, real, verifiable, documented, present tense authenticity beats infrastructure every single time. Drake had the machine. Kendrick had the moment. And the moment won. Here's what I want you all to sit with. Kendrick didn't win this beef because he's a better rapper. Although, for the record, the evidence on that point is also overwhelming. He won because he was willing to do what Drake wasn't willing to do. Not just on a record, not just in a music video, in actual physical space. He went to the place. He stood in front of the house. He let the camera see him. He let the city see him. He did the thing that most people in his position would call reckless or dangerous or unnecessary. And that's exactly why it worked. Because in the streets, real streets, courage is the highest currency. Not money, not followers, not chart positions. Courage. The willingness to be present in the uncomfortable place. The willingness to show your face when most people would hide behind their phone. Kendrick Lamar, the most critically acclaimed rapper in the history of the genre, got on a plane to Toronto and drove through his rival's neighborhood. That is not the move of a man who is scared. That is not the move of a man who is playing a character. That is the move of a man who means everything he says and needed Drake and the whole world to know it. And the whole world does know it now. So, I'm asking you all right now, where does this rank for you? Because we've had beefs. We've had Jay-Z versus Nas. We've had Tupac versus Biggie. God rest both their souls. We've had Pusha T versus Drake, which was already considered one of the greatest individual diss moments of all time. But has anything, and I mean anything, in the history of hip-hop ever combined the lyrical precision, the cultural coordination, the physical presence, and the lasting institutional damage that Kendrick Lamar brought to this particular moment? I'll let you all fight that one out in the comments. What I know for certain is this. When they write the full history of this era of hip-hop, the chapter on Kendrick versus Drake is going to have a specific paragraph. And that paragraph is going to describe a man who dropped 4 diss tracks in 48 hours, flew to his enemy city, drove through his enemy's neighborhood, looked up at his enemy's house, and made sure the block knew he was there. That paragraph is going to read like fiction, but it happened. It's documented. The streets know it, and now you know it. Like this video if you learned something today. Subscribe if you want to keep getting the real breakdown. No filler, no fluff, just the truth with receipts. And drop in the comments, do you think Drake will ever fully recover from this? Or is the damage permanent? Because gang, real, recognize real. And right now, the whole culture knows who got recognized. And Drake, he's still in that house on Park Lane Circle. Same address, same security cameras, same gate, but the whole world now knows that one day Kendrick Lamar stood outside it, and Drake stayed inside. That image doesn't go away. No lawsuit erases it. No album rollout buries it. No amount of streams resets it. It's locked into the history of this culture permanently. The day the internet got visited by the king of the streets and couldn't do a single thing about it.